Justice Patricia Thompson Lee has been breaking barriers for decades. She was the first Black woman to make partner at her firm, and now she's the first Black and Asian American woman to serve on the Nevada Supreme Court. We're chatting with Justice Lee about her inspirational career and how it led to a groundbreaking milestone for young women everywhere. This is Advocate Now. Justice Lee, we're thrilled to have you with us today. And you're, of course, the first Black woman and the first Asian American to serve on the Nevada Supreme Court. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a little overwhelming. It's an honor for sure. It's very humbling. I know that this appointment is a lot bigger than me. I was thrilled to be able to have this opportunity after we had our first African American male justice of the Supreme Court, Michael Douglas, who cracked the door open and held it open for me, and I intend to do the same for those who come after me. So it's a very big deal. It's not anything I take lightly, and I certainly hope that I can do this position justice.
And I think as a country, we've made a lot of progress toward equality, but does your appointment almost serve as a reminder to you that we still have a long way to go since you are the first Black woman and Asian American in this position?
Yeah, it was surprising to me. The fact that we're still having these firsts is a little disconcerting, but they're important to have them nonetheless. I have a daughter who's 14, and when I told her I was thinking about throwing my hat into the ring, the first two questions she asked was, well, how many women are on the Nevada Supreme Court? And I said, well, actually, there's a majority. There's 5 out of the 7. And she goes, well, how many people of color? And I said, well, right now there's none. So I'm hoping to, be that representative there. And she was very surprised. And my dream is that, in the future, my kids and their kids, we won't have any more of these firsts, and we'll just, operate on an equal playing field.
How incredible that your daughter is so aware and asking those questions at that age, though.
Yeah, she's pretty conscientious of everything. I think she has to be, with a mom who is a lawyer and very active in the community, and a dad who's a small business owner, also minority. I think both her and my son, I have a son as well who's 12, and he's not quite there yet. He's still entrenched in his video game phase, and I don't know if it's a phase because my husband still plays video games. But he's not as aware. But I think he thinks it's cool. But my daughter, she took a We the People class, and it really gave her a sense of understanding of our larger society and her place in it, and what a role of somebody in the judicial branch does. And she thinks it's pretty cool as well that her mom is serving in that branch.
Well, there's so much power in representation. I mean, proof to the conversation that you're having with your daughter, especially in being able to see someone thriving who looks like you, whether that's in real life or in media. What do you hope young women see when they look at you as a justice in Nevada's highest court?
I guess just very much what I saw in Michael Douglas when I looked up at the Nevada Supreme Court, that, this is a possibility for me. This is something that is actually an option for me. It was a long time before we had our first person of color on the Nevada Supreme Court. And so, including for most of my practice for 20 years prior to coming onto the bench. And for most of those years, it was just, very monolithic group of people serving in that role. So it doesn't make you think that it's something that you can do. So I'm hoping that, when people look up and they see somebody who looks like them, who maybe has similar backgrounds as them. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. It was a long journey to the bench. But that's something that you can overcome. And I'm hoping that maybe I can send that message just by being on the bench. Representation does actually matter.
And speaking of your journey to the bench, I mean, you've broken barriers for women of color long before this. You were also the first Black woman partner at your firm. How did you overcome inevitable hardships and stereotypes in order to achieve success?
I have to say, I was very fortunate to land where I landed right out of law school. I moved to Las Vegas to take a job with a law firm that was pretty small at the time. I think we had about 12 attorneys, so it's small firm. But all of those 12 attorneys looked exactly the same. It was white male, white male, white male. I think the only minority, well, they were all white male LDS members, and then there was one white male Irish Catholic, and he was the minority before I started. So, but they were very gracious and they were very welcoming. I got wonderful mentorship, and I didn't really feel any different than any of my other colleagues in my position, at least with as it pertains to my firm. Now, when you start going external and you start dealing with other attorneys who, that's where it got a little awkward. I remember attending a creditor meeting. It was a bankruptcy proceeding, and it was a meeting of the creditors, and they were handing out packets of information, and they were handing them out to all the attorneys. And when they got to me, they skipped over me and handed it to the next person and kept going. So during a break, I politely, asked if I could have a packet, and the gentleman said, "Well, I already gave it to your attorney." I said, "I'm actually the attorney." And he goes, and he apologized. He was very, apologetic, but he just said, "I assumed you were the paralegal." So, there was a lot of that at the time. And as I graduated through the different phases of my practice, there was less of it, but even today, you still see a little bit of that. So it's interesting.
You were born in South Korea. By the time you moved to the US as a young child, you were already taking on so many responsibilities, and you've been pretty open about living in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on the hardships that you faced, did that at all inspire or affect your decision to get involved in law?
I think so. From a very early age, I kind of understood that there was a system in place, probably a lot younger than I should have had to have known that. But there's a system in place, and it can work in your favor or it can work against you. And you just have to understand what the rules of the system are. And so, filling out applications for public assistance for my mom, who was very limited in English, kind of introduced me to that very early on. I knew which boxes to check to make sure that we got the proper type of assistance. And I understood that, the great thing about America is that you can, no matter where you come from and how you start the race, you dictate how your journey is going to be. So I worked really hard in school. I had a lot of help along the way, but it wasn't really until I got to, after I graduated from undergrad, I was working at a museum, and I got to work with the late, great Rosa Parks. And she is the one that really kind of gave me that final nudge to give me the confidence to go to law school. I always thought that I might go, but wasn't sure if I was smart enough or good enough. And, people like me don't usually go to law school. And she just quashed all of that noise right out of the gate and said, "You go to law school." And so, of course, when Rosa Parks tells you to go to law school, you go to law school.
What an unbelievable mentor to have. I mean, any other women who have influenced your career path or made you feel that your dreams were achievable?
The Upward Bound program was pretty instrumental in me even getting to college, because, again, I didn't think that was something that was attainable. And they just completely, again, just told me, "Yeah, you're going to college. The only question you have now is which college are you going to go to?" And there were some, there were male and female mentors I had in that program. In my practice, I was the first female and the first person of color at my firm, so I didn't really have those female mentors at my firm. But in the larger community, I connected with SNAWA, it's the Southern Nevada Women's Association for lawyers, and Barbara Buckley from the Legal Aid Center. She is such a ridiculous example of who I want to be when I grow up. She was the first female Speaker of the House and has led the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada as the executive director for close to 30 years now. And she's just a female phenom. And then Laura Fitzsimmons, who's a legendary litigator in our state, who was doing eminent domain. And she's so smart and powerful and kind with her time. And she's given me a lot of guidance as I came onto the bench.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, visit advocate.com and advocatechannel.com.